Hello everyone, I'm Leatherstein and welcome to Leathertainment episode 3. So we had a busy week this week and a couple unexpected issues we're trying to deal with here at Clubhouse. We do this production and creative work for our businesses. And well, most of you know this was the kind of like last week of the taxes accounting. I absolutely hate accounting, and I had to do a lot of chores that I owe to my accountant. He was chasing me for about 2 months now, I guess, and now I finally delivered all the documents he needed last minute. I guess now he's struggling. Sorry about that, but um, I just can't get to myself to work on accounting unless it's the last minute. Anyways, on top of all that little stress, we had a raccoon situation going on in our clubhouse. We know a raccoon was kind of living time to time in our attic space here. We got him on camera, but wasn't able to capture him in a cage and remove him and put him in somewhere else far. So we eventually realized something got into our vents and making a lot of sounds. For the past few weeks, we called animal control, we called the pest control. No one was able to help us because he was obviously in the vent or something. So anyways, today some professionals came, remove a couple dead rats from searching attic space in the raccoon business. Well, presumably raccoon killed some rats in the attic, which was quite stinky, and we still have some of the smell residue here. It's not pleasant. And that kind of leads to my subject this episode. I want to start with that stinky part of the week. What would happen if leather industry wouldn't take the rawhide once it dropped from the animal after the slaughtering happens? It would stink, and that would be a waste, a very actually microbic, very contaminating issue. There's a lot of regulations around handling that kind of waste in the health code. So it would be a big problem if leather industry didn't exist. And I want to talk about this because this is kind of a personal, repetitive question I get from from not animals, from people that learns that I'm in leather business, and sometimes they're vegan, vegetarian people. We respect all kind of lifestyles and completely love what they do and all that stuff, but immediately some of them jump to the presumption that we are killing animals as leather industry. They're like, oh, you're killing animals, I don't like leather and vegan leather and all that, which is not a thing. We're going to talk about it in a different episode. But I want to tell everybody here, leather industry never kills animals. And I'm talking about the general leather. We'll all use the cow hides, the sheepskins, the goats, the pigs. These are the animals that are slaughtered for their meat. None of these animals are ever killed for their leather. It's just not possible. Everything happens in this world, in today's structure, for economical reasons. There's a demand for meat, and there's a lot of meat in the animal, and it makes money. So that's why there is a business that grows the animal, there's a business that slaughters it, there's a business that distributes it, and you and I enjoy a good burger. So that's why that meat industry exists. And leather, the rawhide, is a byproduct waste of that process. Whenever an animal is killed, it got skinned out, and that dropped rawhide is a very time sensitive waste at that point, because it's just like fresh meat, nothing different. If you don't touch it, if you don't preserve it right away, it's gonna go into destructing itself mode very quickly, because the bacteria starts growing on it, especially in room temperatures or even hotter days. It's gonna putrefy and stick in 2-3 days. And if leather industry or someone doesn't take it and take it under control of a preservation technique, which could be drying it, which could be salting it, or some other less usual methods of preserving raw hides, That's the only way to stop the petrification process, so it can be kept until the time it gets to the tannery and gets into a production cycle, which is going to be an upcycling process, giving us the leather, the fabric, a natural fabric that has been produced by humans for I don't know how many thousands of years now. That was the first fabric we ever used to clothe ourselves and all that stuff. And I want to say this is probably one of the first practices of upcycling, which is very popular these days. I was just doing a little research before the episode, and um, I wanted to look at what's the difference between upcycling and recycling. So upcycling is taking a waste product and without destructing it, making it into something else to give it a new use, new life, which is what happens in leather business. We take the raw hide, we make it through a bunch of processes in a month or two, and then it turns into something else, a finished fabric. Then it's going to become a wallet, shoe, bag, a couch, you name it. And that has a second life now. Recycling is something that becomes a waste and it gets destructed and then turns into something else. So in leather, we don't destruct things because we just take the raw hide and just turn it into something else. So I think the upcycling term came about around 1990s, 94, 98. There's different articles going on the web. But this practice has been going on thousands of years. I think it's before BC. The people would have been using the leather for clothing, for their articles. So that makes me pretty confident on saying that leather is one of the first practices of upcycling. And hopefully this will answer the question in a lot of you guys' mind, where does the leather come from? Leather comes from the meat industry. And if leather is not taken at that point, it's going to become an absolute garbage in 2 days. And it's actually a health situation at that point because there's a lot of them. And it's like every animal produces a huge hide. A cow gives you a hide that's about like 80 to 100 pounds when it's wet. And imagine thousands of animals slaughtered every day for their meat. This is a huge waste we're talking about if this needs to go dumped somewhere, and then the gases that will come out of the destruction process with the bacteria working on the leather, that's going to be a huge mess. And I think there is very strict policies by FDA. You can't even go get a raw hide from a slaughterhouse because of those health concerns. There is bacterial infection risk around it. I think slaughterhouses that can only give the raw hides to someone that knows how to cure it, or it has to be processed before it gets out of the slaughterhouse to prevent those kind of health and waste risks. So what happens when leather, the tanneries get the raw hide from the slaughterhouse is pretty much the same process. They just take it on a daily basis, they salt it, they rest it for a while. What happens when you salt the raw hide is it takes the excess water in the skin out by the osmosis process and prevents or slows down the bacterial growth on the skin, so it doesn't petrify until it gets into the drums. And in further chemical processes, we basically completely eliminate the bacterial activity, and we take it under control by tanning the leather with different techniques, vegetable tannins, chrome, oil tannings, and a bunch of other untraditional techniques as well. Then at that point, maybe like in a week or two in the tannery, leather becomes a stable product. It's not finished yet, it's halfway down, but now you can leave it aside for a really long time. Bacteria will not grow on it, it's not going to get petrified. You can keep it as half product stock until you have an order, or you know what you're going to do as a finished product out of it and all that good stuff. So once you pass that stage, you get the leather dyed, you finish it, you paint it, depending on the product you're going after, and it turns into a beautiful craft. So all these stuff that you buy at Chanel, for thousands of dollars, it's coming from sheepskins because some people like to eat sheep meat. And cows, the same thing. A lot of cows become bags, they become shoes, couches, and a lot of use for cowhides. I think most of the leather produced in the entire world is coming from the cows because that's the main source of the meat, and that's the largest animal producing a large hide that gives us a lot of use with the versatility of the hide. Other minor leather sources are the goats, again, slaughtered for their meat. That can be shoes, gloves, garments. And lastly, pigs. There's a lot of pig production. Because of the hair grain structure of the pig, it's not the most desirable leather, but it has been used a lot in suede form as a lining of a lot of fancy articles, garments, and shoes and wallets. So those are the four major types of animals that we get the leather as a byproduct waste of the meat industry. There is one exception that might be worth mentioning here, paying attention, is the exotic leather space. Those are the animals that may not be killed for their meat, and they may be killed for their skin, or they may be killed for other reasons, and skin might be the most valuable thing at that animal. So those are different things, and there is further controls and regulations in that exotic space. There's a protocol called CITES, CITES. This is the organization kind of oversees the humane ways of harvesting exotic skins from crocodiles, from snakes. I'm not sure if ostrich can be considered in the CITES regulation, but as far as I know, it should be an animal type that's endangered species class. And we need to make sure that is not killed for their skins, elephants and so forth. Sometimes we have seen some very cruel videos about foxes for their furs, some small animals like chinchillas and all that stuff. So there is a humane way of raising these animals for their skins and harvesting the leather. And there is absolutely inhumane and cruel ways of doing it, and unfortunately it's being practiced around the world as well, without under the sunlight, in dark spaces. But if there is organization for that to regulate the movement of these types of skins and customs, they don't move from a country to a country without having that kind of certification. So that part of leather industry, which is very small portion of the entire leather space, but it's still worth mentioning since we talked about the clean practices of the common leather, cow, sheep, goat, and pig hides. If you're considering an item made out of exotic skin, make sure to read for those labels, the certifications, and make sure it's coming from the right sources, since it can be iffy. But if you're consuming a typical leather good from a big brand that's just shoes and purses and bags that's made out of cow, sheep, goat, or pig skins, you're good to go. It's just an upcycled material. You're actually doing a favor to the world by eliminating, upcycling your waste and putting it back into economy, and giving it a second life, a further use, pleasure, and a nice look to whoever is using it and making it. Hopefully that explains a little bit of the good side of the leather industry, which is not very commonly known, and make us friends with the vegan, vegetarian community that might be under the wrong impression. So again, hopefully this helps you understand the leather space a little bit better, and it was fun to talk about this side of the leather industry. And we're looking forward to talking to you in the next episode with a different subject. It could be the vegan leather subject, which is another point that's worth talking about in length. Thank you so much. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast or YouTube channel. Have a great week.